Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the Congregational Council meeting to order for November 14th of 2021 right now. And I'm going to first of all mention that we do have other people in attendance online like we would normally have a virtual aspect of it. And we appreciate Dave and Tim and Noah that are on the balcony and handling the IT work. I want to start with a moment of devotions, and I want to read a daily meditation from Richard Rohr called Beginning as Beloved. We can't start a spiritual journey on a negative foundation. If we just seek God out of fear or guilt or shame, we won't go very far. We will start negative and we will stay negative. We have to begin positive by a wonderful experience, by something that's larger than life, by something that dips us into the depths of our own being. That's what the word baptism means, to be dipped into. Jesus is 30 years old when his baptism happens. According to Mark's gospel, he hasn't said a single thing up to that point. Until we know we are a beloved son or a beloved daughter or just beloved, we don't have anything to say. We're so filled with self-doubt that we have no good news for the world. In his baptism, Jesus was dipped into the unifying mystery of life and death and love. That's where it all begins, even for him. The unique Son of God had to hear it with his own ears, and then he couldn't be stopped. Then he has plenty to say for the next 3 years because he has finally found his own soul, his own identity, and his own life's purpose. After 14 years as chaplain in the Albuquerque jails, I am convinced that the reason people make great mistakes is because they have never heard what Jesus heard on that day of his baptism. They never heard another human voice, much less a voice from heaven, say to them, "You are a beloved son, you are a beloved daughter, and in you I am well pleased." If we've never had anyone believe in us, take delight in us, affirm us, call us beloved, we don't have anywhere to begin. There's nothing exciting and wonderful to start with, so we spend our whole lives trying to say those words to ourselves. I'm okay, I'm wonderful, I'm great. But we really don't believe it. The word has to come from someone greater than us. That's really a parent's primary job, to communicate to their child that they are beloved, eternally existing child of God. Our jails are filled to overflowing with people who never heard this foundational message, and sadly so is much of the world. The only purpose of the gospel and even religion is to communicate that one and eternal truth. Once we have that straight, nothing can stop us and no one can take it away from us because it has been given only, always, and everywhere by God for those who are willing and who will accept it freely. My only job and any preacher's job is to try to replicate and resound that eternal message of God that initiates everything good on this earth, that you and all of you are beloved children of God. And that was written by Richard Rohr. We're going to move into the agenda, and the first part of our agenda is the Treasurer's Report, and I'm going to ask Paul Wessel if he could give us an update on the Treasurer's Report at this time.
Good afternoon. For those of you who haven't been following some of the hiring decisions in the church, you might be wondering what's Paul Wessel standing up here as treasurer. You'll recall that Joyce Rossbauer, our longtime treasurer, retired at the end of March, at which point stewardship and the leaders of the church went through a process where we ultimately decided to split the treasurer position into a paid bookkeeper position and then the volunteer treasurer who would have the check signing authority along with a member of the stewardship team. So we do have Christine Ratke, who's our new bookkeeper who started approximately a month ago. And then I took over the treasurer duties. So that's why you have me on the agenda as treasurer. For purposes of the financial report, it begins on the second page of the council packet. And I'm going to be focusing almost exclusively on this first page of the highlights. The following pages have individual line items, and people are welcome to ask questions about that. But for this interim report, I'm pretty much just going to point to you how we're doing in a summary fashion. So if you look at this highlight page as of September 30th, that was the latest financial statements we had available when the council packet was put together. I just received the October financial statements last week, and I'll give you one or two items of update on that, but for purposes of our meeting, we're working off of the September 30th financials. And I want to direct you, if you haven't seen this format before, to the last two columns on the far right. Those are the ones that you'll be most interested in. The next to the far right column is the year-to-date actual. That's what's come in, or what we've spent year-to-date as of September 30th. And then the far right column is just how does that compare to what we budgeted. So if you look, we are doing remarkably well. This is my second year as stewardship chair, and this is the first year where we have been positive all the way through September 30th, where our income has matched our expenses. So you might also recall that for the last several years, we do a deficit budget, where we budget that we anticipate that we are going to have a deficit. And that deficit will be made up either from taking from our reserves or starting last year from a holdback from what we would otherwise send to outreach. So right now, we are in a very good position to not only not have to dip into the contingent holdback amount, but we might actually make a completely balanced income and expenses. That would be a tremendous accomplishment. So I want to thank everybody in the congregation who's been contributing generously. If we can have our year-end surge like we normally do with people giving a little extra, we'll just end the year in a really good spot. But if you look on middle of this highlight page, you will see the line in bold, total operating donations. And if you go all the way over to the year-to-date actual column, it shows that we have, as of September 30th, $241,322 in donation income. That is a little bit below budget, $7,000 below what we budgeted. But when you look down, if you keep going down and you see the expense row, and expenses year-to-date are only $275,613, which is almost $33,000 lower expenses than we budgeted for, largely due to the pandemic and expenses where we weren't having activities. But the combined effect of those two factors means that we are actually, as of September 30th, $142 to the good. So that's great. The other factor that contributed to that positive performance is back last year, properties team and the executive team had the foresight to push to let's get 27 North Chestnut renovated and up for rental. And so that happened in the middle of last year, and that contributes almost $14,000 a year to our property income. So that's been a big plus in getting our income up. What else is here that's relevant? I think you want to look at, if you look at unified donations and designated donations, you will see that, and this is again in the middle, it's the top line of this middle chart. Year to date, we have 213,167 of unified donations. Unified donations, for those of you who don't pay attention to the envelope too much, is if someone simply makes a donation and does not designate for a special fund, that goes to what we call the unified budget. And the unified giving, unified budget, is divided between an 87.5% operating allocation, 2.5% allocated to the repair and maintenance fund, and the outreach allocation of 10%. So we break down in this financial summary unified donations separately from designated. And while our unified donations are running 16,000 some behind budget, our designated donations, where people put operating fund and they want their funds completely to go to the operating fund, that's been running $9,405 above budget. So the combined effect of those plus the lower expenses has just put us in a tremendous position as of this time of the year. Just a small update, as of October 30th, our donation income has continued to increase as we expect. At the end of the year, people are more generous, so that our combined donation income as of October 30th, we were only $157 off of budget. Again, this time of year, that is quite an accomplishment. We have had a little bit more expenses because we had a large insurance premium payment in October, $13,000, which is a one-time payment. So that kind of skewed our expenses in October, and we're running roughly $4,500 under even for the year to date. But overall, it's great performance for this far into the year. We hope people will be generous at the end of the year. That would put us in a tremendous position to start 2022 on a really strong footing. So that's the Treasurer's report as of now. How are we doing questions? Yes. If anybody has any questions, you have to speak loudly, but I'll try to answer them. I don't see any. If when you're looking at the line items page by page, if anybody does have a question, you wonder, you see something and you wonder why it is that way, please don't hesitate to send me an email or to give me a call or stop me in the hallway. I'm happy to talk to anybody explaining individual items. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for the great work you and your team have done this year around the staffing things and also the budget. It's incredible. And I want to thank the congregation for the support of the church. I think it's phenomenal that we are in the position that we are right now. And I'm looking forward to finishing out this year very strongly so that we can go into 2022 with some bold ideas and future the church even stronger position. I'm going to ask Dennis Lord to come up and give the State of the Church report right now.
Good afternoon. Thank you. So I want to begin by taking a look at the cover of this year's directory, our 2021 directory. There's a picture of someone running and a scripture reading from Paul's letter to the Philippians, Straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal. And then on the inside of the cover, these words are written. Like a runner beginning the second lap of their race, we feel the fatigue of the year that has passed. That would have been 2020. But our journey is not over. A new year has arrived. The next lap is in front of us. So we reach deep, straining forward to what lies ahead and pressing on toward our goals. As we do, God's Spirit renews and replenishes our energy, our focus, and our determination. A new year with all its opportunities has arrived. That was the challenge inside the cover of this year's directory that we got in January. And what an incredible challenge it was, or has been for us, to overcome any fatigue, to focus on God's call for our congregation, to strain forward and press on toward that call, trusting that God's Spirit will renew and replenish our energy, our focus, and our determination. Years ago, after Wally's retirement, while at annual conference, denominational leaders and friends of our congregation would ask me some form of this question: how's the Palmyra congregation doing? And my response quickly became, we are hoping to become optimistic. I got some curious looks, to which I would reply, that's better than being determined to be pessimistic. After much hard work, a few years later, my response became, we are becoming optimistic. Being optimistic, though, has been hard with the pandemic. But in 2020, we didn't quit when the challenges got harder. We reimagined how to do things like worship and Sunday school, team meetings, congregational support, and care. Every single team and every group in the church creatively pivoted and continued their works of blessing. And then this current year began with the challenge to continue pressing forward and to lean into the call of Christ for our congregation, and we have done so. Now, if someone asks, how's the Palmyra congregation doing? My response will be, we are not only optimistic, we are moving forward. Maybe not all of us yet, but many of us are. At the end of our October board meeting, a meeting where we reviewed and voted on, or where we reviewed this year's financial report to date, a meeting where we reviewed and voted to recommend the 2022 budget for congregational approval at today's meeting, a meeting where each team reported on its works, its hopes, and its challenges, and there are challenges. A meeting where plans and strategies for moving forward were presented, discussed, and affirmed. At the end of this meeting, during our time of sharing joys and concerns, one board member shared how they had left their home that evening to come to that board meeting with a sense of duty and some dread. I'm not sure whether she spelled the word board, B-O-A-R-D, or B-O-E-R-D. I think I just heard an amen. But by the end of the meeting, she shared with joy that she had become excited, optimistic, and ready to move forward. Her excitement was echoed by all in attendance that night. Some of the things which generated this excitement are still in process and will be shared with the congregation in the months to come. But let's take a look at this past year. Building on the previous year, our combined in-person and virtual attendance and worship continues to grow and greatly exceeds pre-pandemic participation. Our congregation and its impact are expanding, not only in numbers, but geographically. New initiatives have been imagined and launched to make our worship experiences and preaching more creative, engaging, and nurturing of the faith and lives of those who join us in worship. A new initiative has been imagined and launched to grow our service and outreach ministries building on the engagement and excitement and growth we experienced with this summer's Unity in Action project. A new initiative has been imagined and launched to develop a more structured and disciplined strategy for inviting visitors to join us as partners in mission and ministry, thus growing our congregation and its impact on our community and our world. A new initiative has been imagined and will soon be launched to offer support to caregivers in families experiencing dementia challenges. An initiative that was imagined and has been worked on for a couple of years by our deacons, our neighborhood project, will soon be launched to better care for all the active people and families in our congregation during times of challenge and joy. This is a project that will build relationships of love and care in our community of faith. An initiative has been imagined and has been worked on a little bit that will engage all of us in the process, a process of discerning our individual passions, talents, and gifts, so that each of us can better discern God's call in our individual lives and how that call can find meaningful expression within our congregation and the larger ministries of our community, denomination, and world. Education and training has occurred to not only begin addressing concerns for financial stability, but begin moving our congregation from a mindset of financial scarcity and limitation to a confidence in financial abundance, excitement, and engagement, unleashing our ministry teams to imagine and launch long hoped for and newly imagined ministries that support our congregation's mission. Clear steps are being taken to develop an engaging and empowering plan of organization where everything is guided by a congregationally discerned and agreed upon mission statement, with board-generated policies and guidelines that allow teams to function with confidence in building up their areas of ministry. Reducing the overall congregation's time spent in tedious meetings, and increasing for all of us our time spent in hands-on mission and ministry activities, thus building excitement and engagement within the congregation, which is seen and felt by our neighbors and friends who may then wish to join with us as partners in the work of this congregation. And based on our 2021 worship theme, we continue to imagine and plan for ways to, quote, equip all of us for the works of effective and purposeful ministry in our lives, our church, and our larger communities. And just to end this list, which is not an exhaustive list of what we have accomplished, worked on and accomplished this year, we have begun to assemble the implementation team for phase 2 of our building renovations, which will focus on this room, our primary place for gathering and worshiping together. Our worship team has begun imagining and designing the process for full congregational engagement in discerning the core values that will guide specific renovation decisions. Friends, partners in mission and ministry, the state of this congregation is not only strong, it is growing in vitality. Sometime in this past year, I can't remember in response to what, I wrote down words like these. The questions are not, can we grow this congregation? Or can our mission and ministries grow? Or can our positive impact in each other's lives, in our communities, and in our world grow? Yes, all of these things can happen. The question is, do we have the vision and the will to make it so? Or to paraphrase the insight of this year's directory cover, the next lap is in front of us again. Let us continue to reach deep, straining forward to what lies ahead and pressing on toward our goals. As we do, God's Spirit will continue to renew and replenish our energy, our focus, and our determination. A new year, with all of its opportunities, is on the horizon. I think the text for our 2022 directory cover will come from Hebrews 12. Hear these words. So, let us lay aside every weight that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith. May it be so.
Thank you, Dennis. And I just want to affirm to everybody in this room and anybody watching that we have leadership that is optimistic, and I am optimistic. I am optimistic about the financial situation. I'm optimistic about the direction that the church is taking in some initiatives, and I think it's a very positive step for the Palmyra Church of the Brethren. So thank you, Reverend Lohr, for giving us that update today. We're going to move right into discussion and action items. We have several on the list. And the first action item that we need to move on is the approval of the minutes of the November 8th, 2020 Congregational Business Meeting. All of them at one time. Okay. Yes. Okay. So I will describe each of those, and then we'll vote on them all at one time. And that does make it much simpler to handle it that way. The minutes are in your packet and have been presented. The second item there, and we have a typo on the agenda here. We are looking for approval for the 2022 budget. It's incorrect. It says 2021. So we're talking about 2022. The budget, and Paul has already given it some overview, and we can have some questions of Paul if needed to. The other third item there is that we will be voting on the 2022 slate of officers. Yes, thank you. Do you want to speak to the budget now, Paul, and then we'll go ahead, and then we'll go on to the slate of officers, and Charlie can present that. So we'll do these in order. Go ahead.
Thank you. If you turn in your packets to right after the minutes of the last congregational meeting, you'll come to the budget. And again, we're going to focus primarily on the first page, which is the summary of the budget. The following pages break it down line by the team budgets. The structure of the budget this year is exactly the same as last year. We haven't made any changes in the format or the proposal that we would hold back 1/2 of the unified donation allocations to the outreach fund and building and repair fund pending the end of 2022 to make sure we have a balanced budget. So that's not changing from what we have in place for this year. If you look at, let's look at the expenses first. Overall, our expenses for 2022, we are budgeting an overall approximately 3% increase in expenses. I'm not talking about 2021 actual expenses. As I said, we've been below budget on expenses in 2021 because of the restrictions on our activities due to the COVID. So I'm talking about 3% increase in expenses versus what was budgeted for 2021. That is a very modest increase given what we're projecting in terms of inflation in the country. I feel very good that we've, the teams And the executive team and the board have worked very carefully to try to be responsible in our budgeting of expenses. Basically, the expenses, as I said, have gone up 3%. If you look at the pastoral line item under expenses, for 2022, we are budgeting a total of $238,503. That is roughly 56% of our overall expenses that we budget. In 2021, we budgeted 2,027,939, which was roughly 59%. So total pastoral expenses have gone up, budget expenses, $10,500. Why is that? We basically, two things. We gave everyone on the paid staff a 2% cost of living increase. 2% is really modest. Those of you who follow your Social Security checks are already saying Social Security checks will go up 5.6% because of inflation. So 2% was the district and denominational recommended cost of living adjustment, which we followed. We also added a 1% experience, if you will, increase for all of our paid staff. The pastoral staff, that 1% depends on if you're part-time, we actually add up. So if you're half-time, you would get an experience increase every 2 years, because that would give you a full additional year of experience. If you're a third time, you would get it every 3 years. So pastoral staff treated just a little different than our non-pastoral staff, but overall, it was a total 3% increase. That translated, when we got down to total expenses, because of other adjustments, again, a total 3% increase in expenses. We also, the main pastoral change is that we increased Bethany's time from a little bit more than half time to 2/3 time. So that's another reason why our expenses went up a little bit for next year. Of course, we're projecting slightly more expenses. What are we doing income-wise? This budget, we did the same thing. We projected that our giving would increase by approximately 3%. And we're asking everyone to consider, at a minimum, increasing your giving over 2021 by 3% for 2022. Now, some people won't be able to do that. Other people we know could easily do more, and we're hoping it all balance out. We have roughly 10,000 more in expenses we're budgeting for next year, so we need 10,000 more in income. I think that's all I have, unless there's specific questions. The stewardship team recommends that the congregation approve this, and we think it's a very responsible budget.
I think we're going to open it to questions, Paul. Any questions to Paul and the budget? Okay. Now, just for clarification, we have people that are online, and they will be voting on a Google document. So I want Dennis Lohr to give some explanation about how they can be voting, and then we want to back up a little bit, and we will vote individually on the items that we have presented here in the agenda. But we wanted to give the people online a little bit of a heads up and a head start so that they can begin some of their processes online. So with that, Dennis, could you explain that situation?
I think my first question, no, we do have people live streaming with us. Okay, thank you. I think about 11:30, I sent out an email providing a link to the live stream for this council meeting, and also there's a link to a Google poll that is now open. and also a link to the document package for this meeting. So if you're joining us online, if you go ahead and open the link for the Google poll, you will see that the items of business that are listed in the discussion action items are listed as one of 4 or 5 questions. So as we go through this, as Dave takes us through this, simply answer that specific question at the time. So there's an approval of minutes question, go ahead and answer that. You cannot submit your votes until you've completed all the items, then you need to hit submit. I think Dave's going to go back and catch us up now so we can vote on the minutes and the budget, and then we'll proceed. And that will be counted here. But if you're participating online, simply mark the Google ballot the same way, the Google poll each way, but you can't submit it until all the items are finished. The other thing I would point you to is that in the link to the packet, you can see the slate of officers that Charlie will be presenting in a little bit, and you may need to have that open in order to answer the question or two related to it.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, we're going to back up just a little bit, and please understand and be patient with us here a little bit. I'm going to separate out for this group here, and we will vote on agenda items individually, and we will not have a final decision until Tim Hoffer conveys to me what the online voting tabulation is at the end of near the end of the meeting. So at this point, I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes for the November 8th, 2020 meeting. I have a motion by Charlie. Do I hear a second? Okay. Dino has a second. Okay. So we have a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes from last year. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. We have a majority, and we won't call it determined until we hear the online version, the online voting. Now we will move on to the 2022 budget item that Paul has presented, and I'm open to action on that in the form of a motion. Dave Chris has moved to approve the budget as presented. Do I hear a second? I think Steve has raised his hand there. All those in favor of the 2022 budget as presented by Paul, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign? Okay, hearing none. The majority here also stated approval for that, and we will wait until we have the online voting at the end of the process to complete the whole process. Now, with that, we're going to call Charles Runkle to the lectern to give the 2022 slate of officers.
Okay. Deanne Daniels and myself worked on this slate for the better part of the year. Currently, there are quite a few holes that still need filled. But this is a slate that has been approved by the board, and we are making the motion to affirm this slate of officers for the 2022 year. Those that are here, the paper is in the back page of the packets. I ask that you check for affirm the slate, or if you affirm the slate with exceptions, please mark so. Then just pass it to the center, and I will pick them up, and we will, at the end of the meeting, go have everything tabulated. Just here. Yes, just tear that last page out to hand to me.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes. Does anybody need a ballot that's in the packet to vote on the slate of officers? We have extras. Okay, that's an agenda item that we will not need action in on your passing on your papers, so we'll be good with that, and Charlie will have tabulation of that process. The next item of agenda is the steward's appointments, and Paul Wessel will give a description and talk about that just a little bit.
Under our plan of organization, stewardship appoints the financial secretaries as well as the treasurer, and those appointments require the affirmation of Congregational Council. So our financial secretaries for the last numerous years have been John and Carol Grace. Financial secretaries, again, the ones that keep track of donations, that give you at year end a required statement of how much you've given for the congregation that you can use for tax purposes or individual financial planning purposes. So they've just done a great service, and they have agreed to serve for another year, and stewardship has appointed them. Also, as I indicated, under our new arrangement where the bookkeeper is separate from the treasurer, and the bookkeeper doesn't have signing authority over our financial accounts, stewardship has appointed me as treasurer. And so we're asking the council to affirm both of those appointments. I did mention, just as sort of a follow-up to the financial report and the budget, in those documents, you still see a line item for treasurer compensation. That now is really our compensation to the bookkeeper. The treasurer is a volunteer position. So I ask the congregation simply to affirm those appointments.
Thank you, Paul. I guess at this time, I'm going to recommend that anybody that is on the live stream complete their voting. And that way, as soon as we finish our process, within a few moments, we hope to have the results of that. So I guess we need a vote on that. So I have a motion from Paul that we approve the steward's appointments. Is there a second to that motion? Charlie? It's been properly moved and seconded for the appointments. All those in favor can say aye. Opposed, the same sign? All right, thank you. So the majority has spoken here, and now we will wait just a brief minute till we hear what the virtual and live streaming has done. And as a report, Charlie just reported that all present have affirmed the slate of officers that the team has presented. I just got a text message from Tim. He's got an answer for me. He's all the way up there, but he texted. Now, if Dave could figure out how to operate his phone. Okay. The responses from the live streaming have all been affirmative also. So to all the votes that we've taken, Carol, through live stream and in person, we have voted to affirm and approve those different items. We've reached the end of our agenda. I just wanted to say thank you for all your attendance and those on the live stream process. I also want to thank Carol for filling in for taking notes for us today. Appreciate that. A thumbs up. Cool. Just before I close, does anybody have any comments at all that they want to offer as we close and we're going to leave? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.